Welcome to those of you who are Johnny on the spot. Well, there's nobody on here just yet live, but people who are watching as a recording, they're already seeing this. So we got to start out quick, and I can't do that because I got to find this thing. I have to keep. Oh, there we are. There we are. All right. Found us. Okay. All right. Y'all know how this rolls. Anybody got any birthdays you want to shout out today? Any family, friends, famous people? How about that? Family, friends, famous people. How about that? Family, friends, famous people. All right. I know of a few, and some of you may not care about them. Okay, actually, y'all, this was so weird. I don't remember. I really didn't go back and look. I don't remember there being, like, it's a slow day in birthdays. I don't see a single day that's this slow. I've only got one that I'm going to give you, and you don't care. I just had to come up with somebody, and it just happened to be somebody who was pretty recent. And if you don't like the Georgia Bulldogs, you don't care anything about this. And even if you do like the Georgia Bulldogs, you still don't care. But today, in 1999, is Justin Fields' birthday. He was the quarterback at Georgia and then left, went to Ohio State. So anyway, he's 26 years old today. And wow. And he was born in Kennesaw, Georgia. So, yeah. Okay, but oddly enough, I do have 3 deaths. Who knew that deaths would be more interesting than births today? Anyway, you'll know these people. Well, at least 2 of them. On this date in 1953, Joseph Stalin died, the dictator from the Soviet Union. But he died of a stroke at 73. Did you bring us all some?
Come right, James.
Oh, good. On this date in 1963, Patsy Cline died, which I'm not a country music fan, so I didn't know about that. But y'all know how old she was when she died?
As old as I am?
Or how old? I mean, how she died? Either of those?
No.
I thought y'all would have known just because I thought y'all maybe liked that genre of music more than I did, being old school. But she died in a plane crash when she was 30 years old. So yeah, whatever impact she had on country music or the music world in general, she had at an early age. And then, y'all don't care about this. But, hey, 1982, it was on this date that John Belushi died. He was Saturday Night Live alum. He was in Animal House, Blues Brothers, all that. But drug overdose at age 33. That has taken many, many people, many famous people, sadly enough. That's all the deaths I got for you. I got some events for you. Some things that happened on this date, March the 5th. Can you believe we're in March already? It was so weird writing down the 3rd month. I mean, it doesn't even feel like we're in 25 yet, and yet we're in March. Anyway. Okay, this date in 1558, smoking tobacco was introduced to Europe by Francisco Fernandez. What makes that so interesting to me is that he was a physician. So, and look at what it does. On this date in 1750, for those of you who like the arts, this date in 1750, the first performance of a Shakespearean production in the United States. They performed Richard III in New York City. Patsy Parker. And then, on this date in 1770, a date which will live in infamy, was the Boston Massacre. If you remember the Boston Massacre, some British troops opened up fire on and killed 5 people there in Boston who were basically protesting, and that was used as an impetus to dislike the British and to propel into the Revolutionary War. So, Boston Massacre on this date in 1770. I say this in honor of my dad. Y'all may not care about this. But my mom, my brother will be watching, and my sister eventually. She doesn't watch it live, but she'll watch it eventually. But in his honor, in 1853, on this date, Steinway and Sons was founded by not Heinrich Steinway, but by Heinrich Steinweg. He later changed his name. But anyway, that's in case you didn't know, those are the ones who make the famous pianos. And it was also founded in New York City. Not that this matters, but it is about Georgia, so I thought it was interesting. On this date in 1856, Georgia becomes the first state to regulate railroads. So I guess we led in something, but some of y'all like this. Some of y'all care about this. It was this date in 1955 that Elvis made his first appearance on television. It was not the Ed Sullivan Show. It was actually a local video broadcast of a popular radio show called Louisiana Hayride, and it was in Shreveport, Louisiana. So it's first time on TV, 1955.
Elvis Christian's playing on my television when I turned it off to come tonight.
Oh, was it really? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Not live, I hope. Anyway, I'm sorry. On this day, a year later. Okay, all right.
Really was.
So, 1955, it was Elvis's first time on TV. 1956 was the first televised showing of King Kong on television. So, anyway, y'all really don't care about this, but y'all know I like music I'm not supposed to like. On this date in 1971 was the first live performance of "Stairway to Heaven" by Led Zeppelin. It was in Belfast.
I like that song.
You do like it? Get out of here. I'm so excited. All right, and then the last thing, y'all, I was blown away by this. Just 6 years ago, 2019, the car production company Bugatti, they announced the most expensive new car ever made. Now, I don't know if I'm going to pronounce this correctly, but La Voiture Noire. That's the name of the car. And it was sold for $19 million. A single individual. Can you guess how many of those were made?
Probably one.
Just one. Yep. So you got to wonder, man, who owns that today, and what would that be worth? $19 million to have a one of its kind. And what could possibly go into a vehicle? I mean, you talk about cars that are over $100,000. I'm like, why? I mean, unless it's a Corvette. I mean, that makes sense. But other than that, why? Why? Anyway. All right. There you go on this date. Good to see y'all in here. Glad to have y'all. Good to have you who are watching online. Oh, we got several folks watching online. Of course, I did advertise this as talking about Armageddon. I may have overstated that because we're really not going to use that word tonight. So somebody might be disappointed, but we're barreling toward that. Okay, so I'm hoping y'all pray for me. I don't have any notes for this, and so I'm hoping I can remember everything I wanted to say. Oh goodness. I remember one time somebody, in fact, I think it was after I got to this church, somebody was talking about, wow, you preach those sermons without any notes. I'm like, okay, so I should have, but I didn't correct them. But they were wrong. I mean, I got notes just about every week. Not every week, but most every week. But anyway, I think that this is going to be interesting tonight. I hope. Okay, so we're in Revelation chapter 17. So for those of you who are online, you actually have a little headway on that because it says there in the description of what's going on tonight that that's where we are. So you've seen that before, the people here have. Revelation chapter 17, because we left off with chapter 16. Am I right? If I'm wrong, somebody please let me know. But Revelation chapter 16 very quickly spelled out what the last set of judgments, called the bowl judgments, what those were going to look like. And just like they are presented to us here, They'll be rapid and they'll be severe. And with that comes the end. In fact, notice there in Revelation chapter 16 and verse 17, it says, the seventh angel poured out his bowl upon the air. So that's the seventh, the last judgment, right? And a loud voice came out of the temple from the throne saying, it is done. Which we pointed out last week that is similar to Jesus' words on the cross, it is finished. And it just so happens that when Jesus said it on the cross, he was opening up the avenue whereby repentant sinners could be saved. And this pronouncement of it is done is simply saying now the door has shut and judgment will be pronounced upon God's enemies, upon unrepentant sinners. So, it is a very significant announcement, and they mean the exact opposite things between when Jesus said them there and when this voice, it doesn't really say who the voice is. It could be Jesus again, actually. Think about it. But a loud voice says it is done. Now, so with that, we see that the end is here. It's done. It's finished. We're over with. What is going to be the event? What is going to be the mark of the end of the tribulation? Hint, I just said it. Anyone? Armageddon. When Armageddon is done, when it is accomplished, that's because that is where all of God's enemies are defeated. That is the end of the tribulation. There is no more. Okay, we enter into a new phase in world history known as the millennium. Okay? Now, so it is done as pronounced in chapter 16. Armageddon, gosh, I really feel bad now for saying it like I did. Although, I mean, y'all who are here, you should be here. But we don't really get to the Battle of Armageddon until chapter 19. So what's the holdup? Chapters 17 and 18 are going to tell us a story that has been going on at the same time as these judgments have been unfolding. Okay? Chapter 17, verse 1 says, then one of the seven angels who had the seven bowls came and spoke with me. So let's just stop there for a second. The fact that you now have an angel who is identified, not specifically, of course, we don't have name, rank, and serial number, but it is given a description, an angel who had one of the seven bowl judgments, one of the last of the judgments, is the one who is now talking. And so there is some connection, and we don't know to what extent, but there is some connection between the judgments that have been unfolding and what we're about to read in chapter 17. And I do struggle a little bit with making full sense of the fact that it is one of the bowl judgment distributors. I don't know how else to say it. Because it is obvious that what we're going to read about is something that has been ongoing really through most all of the tribulation, if not every moment of the tribulation. Okay, I haven't really thought this through. But it could have been already in place before the tribulation began. Okay? So, I'm not really sure why it would have been one of those guys, one of the bowl judgment angels, who made this statement to John. But whatever the case, it's connected to the judgments, and it's not, so here's the important distinction. It is not a description of the judgment. It is not the what, it's the why. Here are all these judgments, and maybe that's what it is. Maybe it's this guy who has been here for the whole thing. He's been waiting his turn the whole time, throughout the whole tribulation, to pour out his judgment. He's been holding on to this thing. until it's his turn, and finally he has his turn, and he's saying, okay, now you've seen how we've done all this, or how we've waited for all this. This is why we had to do this. So here, chapter 17 and 18 are telling us why the judgments had to come about in the first place. So this ought to be pretty important. He says, "Come here, and I will show you the judgment of the great harlot who sits on many waters, with whom the kings of the earth committed acts of immorality, and those who dwell in the earth were made drunk with the wine of her immorality. And he carried me away in the spirit into a wilderness, and I saw a woman sitting on a scarlet beast, full of blasphemous names, having 7 heads and 10 horns." Remember, we've talked about that before. We'll talk about it again, probably next week. Yeah. "The woman was clothed in purple and scarlet, and adorned with gold and precious stones and pearls, having in her hand a gold cup full of abominations and of the unclean things of her immorality. And on her forehead a name was written, a mystery, Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots and of the abominations of the earth. And I saw the woman drunk with the blood of the saints and with the blood of the witnesses of Jesus. When I saw her, I wondered greatly." Which is that last statement, I believe in the NIV as well, is extremely weak from what was meant. But that's what we'll talk about at the end. Okay, so now, for those of you who like the King James, I will be more crude, but I'm just quoting your Bible. The great whore of Babylon. If you've ever heard that expression, this is where it comes from. Now, more modern day translations don't use it doesn't use whore. It simply talks about the mother of harlots. And which of course means the same thing. It just doesn't sound as crude anymore because we have to keep coming up with new words that don't sound so bad, right? So this is where that comes from. Now, have any of you ever heard, and again, I don't know what the extent of your studies of the book of Revelation. What, if you've ever studied this before, what have you heard would be the great harlot, the great prostitute of Babylon? What is that referring to? Has anybody ever heard any study on that? No? Okay. Okay, so you studied, you just don't remember. Okay, that's fair enough. Well, because I wanted to go ahead and dispel one of the theories. And it's been a theory that's been out there for, what are we in? 2000. So it's been out for almost 500 years. And that is that it's the Roman Catholic Church. In fact, I didn't do this, I didn't practice this, but I will bet you that if you will type in that phrase, the great whore of Babylon or the mother of harlots in Revelation 17:5, I'm not going to put it in because it'll probably render something that I don't want. Somebody will do an audit of my computer and then they'll be like, oh, look what he's been looking at. So I'm not going to do it. But there will probably be some very detailed, graphic explanations of why they believe that this is referring to the Roman Catholic Church. In fact, it does say that it sits on the 7 head in verse 9, chapter 17, verse 9. The 7 heads are 7 mountains on which the woman sits. Rome is made up of 7 hills, 7 mounts, if you will, or at least it was in the day. I guess it still would be. So they would say that it's the Roman Catholic. This is not the Roman Catholic Church. I don't agree with the Roman Catholic Church on many, many things, but that's not what this is talking about. I believe that people who are Roman Catholic, if they believe the Bible, they are still saved. I know of Catholic churches that teach justification by faith alone. They're saved if they believe it and follow it. So That's not what this is talking about. And I don't mind calling out anybody. I'll call out Baptists when they're wrong. So we have here, really, it's a very detailed description. And I've really taken up a lot of time mumbling. And so let me get to the point. We have a detailed description of this great harlot. And in fact, there are 10 descriptors. So we're going to run through those very, very quickly. Now, let me go ahead and tell you so that it will make sense as we're talking about it. So I'm not trying to like, surprise y'all at the end or any of that kind of stuff. This harlot is a reference to the world religion in the time of the Antichrist. The false religion. And so that if you've ever done a study of this and you've heard about one world government and one world religion, this is where it comes from. It doesn't mean that there is only one, but there is one that encompasses the entire earth and will claim a majority of the earth as its adherents. Okay? So, with that in mind, let's understand a few things about this final world religion in the time of the tribulation. 10 descriptors, and I hope that I can point them all out again and be able to explain what they are. So the first thing is that it is there in chapter 17 on verse 1, it does say that it is a great harlot. Now, harlot is the word that we would normally translate as prostitute. And it does refer to sexual immorality. Normally, that is what it's talking about. And honestly, that could be the main thing that it's trying to get across here too, because it is going to talk about later on how people have bought into that. But I think that it would be better for us to understand that it's really referring to not specifically sexual immorality right here, but simply to its great wickedness in general. Because the Bible does use sexual imagery to refer to sinfulness that is not necessarily sexual. For instance, the Bible consistently, especially in the Old Testament, talks about how Israel committed adultery against God. And that adultery usually was not sexual in nature. It had to do with idolatry, that they would go and search other gods. And so, if you are watching right now, I have no idea what happened. I don't know what happened. But you can still hear me because it is showing up on my feed. But I don't know. I apologize. It might be the battery. I'm sorry. So if you will, please just put up with this and just listen for another 10, maybe 15 minutes, okay? And then we'll find out what's wrong and have it fixed by next week, okay? Basically, for those of y'all who are in here, basically the camera feed is now kaput. So it might be that battery pack that's up there. Because we did use it Sunday night. I bet that's what it is. I apologize. My fault. Okay, so I think what we're talking about here is simply a reference to great wickedness. Not necessarily sexual, although it certainly involves that. But we're going to talk about immorality in a few minutes, okay? So that's the first descriptor. The second descriptor is sits on many waters. You might be thinking, well, what on earth does that mean? How are you going to make sense out of that? And won't it simply be conjecture as to what that would be referring to? And the answer to that, I love it when I can say no to that. I love it when the Bible explains the Bible. So if you'll look over it, if you're still in chapter 17 of Revelation, look down at verse 15. For me, it's on the next page. For you, it just might be down the page. Verse 15 says, "The waters which you saw where the harlot sits are peoples and multitudes and nations and tongues." In other words, everyone, again, not every single person, but everyone is gravitating and has accepted this particular religion, this false religion, and this is where the one world religion comes from. That's where that saying comes from. Because everybody has bought into this. Everybody practices this except for the saints of God. Okay? Cool so far? Number 3, with whom the kings of the earth committed acts of immorality. And again, this immorality probably is not talking about sexual, but the emphasis here should be on the kings of the earth. The kings of the earth perform what function for a kingdom? Is it religious? Kings. They rule. It is political. So when you talk about, we love to talk about the separation of church and state, although some people use that to a fault. They do. But here you are going to have the an overabundance of the mixture of the two. There will be no difference between church and state. And people are going to be hungry for that. I mean, you think about throughout this time of the tribulation and all the calamity that is falling on people, and they are beginning to understand that this is God that is doing this. They will begin to look, and when there's no power on earth that can stop it, they're going to begin to look to supernatural help. It's just not God. You remember they're going to be cursing God, so they're going to be looking for alternate gods, alternate supernatural explanations to all this. And so this world religion is going to be there, and it's going to be mixed up with the Antichrist, who's going to be a political ruler, a military ruler, and also a religious ruler. And so it's going to be all mixed in there together. Okay? So when it's talking about the kings of the earth commit acts of immorality, it means they're intermingling. Okay? Those who dwell on the earth were made drunk with the wine of her immorality. And I believe, again, I know that they're using the same words, and so you can call me out, and I can be wrong, and I'll be okay with that. But I believe that here we are talking about a lot of sexual nature involved in the wickedness of man. And we are already in a day, and I've mentioned this in other times, maybe even in here too, I don't remember. I talk too much, so I can't remember where I say stuff, right? So we live in a day where really you can profess to be a Christian, and you can talk about God, and oh yeah, I'm so committed, and all that kind of stuff. And yet you can be carrying on sexually immorally all you want, and nobody's going to question it. You can live with people without being married to them. We can talk about homosexuality and all that kind of stuff. And all that is totally acceptable in our world today. And not just accepted and celebrated, but it also does not. We're at a day already. This is really bothersome to me. We're already at a day now where there is no contradiction in terms to say that I am going to participate in this sexual sin and still be considered committed to my faith. And I won't have a problem with it in my mind. Like, we're already there. So it's not hard to see how that will certainly be true here, and it will be rampant. It'll be like nobody will be questioning it anymore. I'm going to start coming up, like, as I listen to music and watch TV and hear Oscar speeches, in Hollywood, thank God for this, God, I heard somebody talking about God being the creator, of the universe, all that kind of stuff. And do you think with their sexuality that they are honoring God? No. And that's filtered all the way down. That's here in the Bible Belt too. It's not just out there in Hollywood. So anyway, all right, I've said enough about that. So we see that that's part of the problem. So that's what? 1, 2, 3. That's number 4. Number 5. Carried me away in the spirit to the wilderness. I saw a woman sitting on a scarlet beast. Now, we know that this beast is the beast. It's the Antichrist and the system that he has developed. And so she gets her strength, she gets her support, her vitality. she is dependent upon the beast. This false religion is dependent upon the beast to survive and to interweave throughout the world. So now it's the scarlet beast that has the blasphemous names and the 7 heads and 10 horns. So we're saving that till next week. So that's 5. Number 6, the woman is clothed in purple and scarlet. Purple is the color of royalty. So she's made her way, her religion has made her way into the upper echelons of all the world's systems, of all the political systems, the different nations that are holding on to their own identity, and those kinds of things, who are able to do that at this point. And they've bought into it, hook, line, and sinker. That's purple, and there's scarlet. Scarlet is the color of wealth. This will be an extremely wealthy religion. Don't get mad at me if you want to. Whatever. Don't shoot the messenger. I got an interesting packet this week. Got it Monday. Actually, I saw it Sunday. But I put it on the secretary's desk so that somebody would see that it was not made out to me. It was to a former pastor that I will be sure to give a hard time to the next time I see him. And it was a packet of a religion that wanted to come in and wanted to offer to give us help. And to offer help to churches of all faiths to come in and help for free. And they would send people in that would help us and with our finances and help us with our ministry to young adults or to young people, to the next generation, that will help in volunteering, volunteerism, and missions and those kind of things. And it was an extremely nice packet. In fact, I took it back into the secretary after she saw it and gave it to me, and I opened it because I just was dying to see what was in there. And I took it back in, and I was like, man, look at this thing. This is really well done. It was a well done packet. And it was from the Church of Scientology.
Wow.
And they would help Baptists and Buddhists and Hindu and Catholics and Methodists. It didn't matter. They would go help anybody. Because again, you have this, I'm getting way off, man. We're never going to finish this. Because we live in a world now, we live in a society now that thinks that ecumenism is a positive thing. Like people in our churches, and maybe people here, because they've not thought this through. Do you know what ecumenism is? It's taking different faiths and let's work together for the common good. Now, listen, I can join hands with anybody and go help people get out of their homes after a tornado. I can do that. But we have to be careful and understand that the next step in this, and it's in their minds, like this is already happening, okay? I'm not making this stuff up. But that we should be able to worship together. Let me just tell you something. We don't worship the same God as the Mormons. We don't worship the same God as the Buddhists. We don't worship the same God as Jehovah's Witnesses, as much as they want to call on the Bible. We don't worship the same God as they do. And ecumenism is something that is really real. We're already working toward what we're seeing in Revelation chapter 17. It's already on its way. Now, why did I get off on all that? Oh, I got off because we're talking about Rich. How did I get there? This is y'all's fault. Somehow, it can't be mine. That's all I know. That's no notes. That's the problem. That's why I take notes in church. I won't be rambling. Hey, since you don't like my music, I'm going to go ahead and quote it anyway. Lord, I was born to be a rambling man. Well, that's what I do. I ramble. Okay? All right. So there's the scarlet, what was it, a robe? Clothed in purple and scarlet. The scarlet is referencing the fact that it is very, very wealthy. And so what got me off on the Scientology thing is that they are backed by some of the richest people in America, like the Hollywood types and all that, because they appeal to them. And so they're turning around and supporting them and those kind of things. And so that's how this is going to unfold. I mean, We're not looking at something that's weird. We're looking at something that is going on right now. Right now. So it's easy to see. All this is easy to see. Here I go again. So Jesus, you remember when Jesus is talking about this, and he says, the spirit of Antichrist is already here. It is, because we're living it right now. Now, it just so happens that it is not very well formulated yet. It is not cohesive yet. It is not as widespread. And it is also not as, I don't know how else to say this, it's also not as out of the closet as it will be here in chapter 17. But it's coming. Okay? So we already see it. It'll just come in its fullness later on. And the next description, whatever number we're on now, 7, I think. I don't even remember. What? Am I right? 8. So the next one is really driving home this idea of the richness, the wealth, the nasty wealth of this particular world religion. They are adorned with gold and precious stones and pearls. So yeah, that just says the same thing again, just in more descriptive terms. So number 9, there in verse 4, having in her hand a gold cup full of abominations and of the unclean things of her immorality. Gold, beautiful. Gold, valuable. Gold, desired. Right? That's what's on the outside. And on the inside, so it looks good and it looks right. And deceitfully, people will flock to this. It will have everything that they want. And it will make sense. And again, we live in that day today too, right? Where it doesn't matter what you want to proclaim or what you want to believe, there are people there who are going to make it sound like it's good and like it's all right, and they will encourage you to go for it. But on the inside, God hates it. Hates it. By the way, if you think that God doesn't hate, you need to read the book of Proverbs. God hates. So, full of abominations, unclean things connected to her because she is totally, totally wicked. And are you sure we were on number 8? Maybe I wonder if you came up with an extra one. Maybe I missed one because we got a couple more here. On her forehead was a name was written, a mystery. And by the way, a mystery in the ancient days wasn't necessarily. This is very important. It wasn't necessarily something that nobody knew. Sometimes it was, but it wasn't. In the ancients, mystery was a reference to mystery religions like Eastern religions. Eastern mythology and those kind of things. And by the way, that's so funny. Here I go again. I read an article just yesterday about a practice. I don't even know how to pronounce it. Reiki. I don't know. I don't know how to pronounce that. But it's been around for a long time, and it is it's like a massage. It's like a what do you call it? What's a broader word for massage? A therapy. It is a therapy that helps people who are dealing with anxiety and with pain. And it comes from, I think it comes from Buddhism. I'm not 100% sure about that. It comes from an Eastern religion. And it's becoming more and more popular, and people are seeking it out more and more. And just like we do other things that come out of Eastern religions that, if I said it, people would think I'm nuts. But these are things that are coming from these religions that people are seeking out now. And so that's what this mystery is talking about. It's not something that nobody knows because it's pretty much come outright. That's why he can write about it. But it is something that is Eastern in nature from a false religion. And this name was written, Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots and of the abominations of the earth. We've explained what those are. So there's another description, is what is on her forehead. Notice how much is on people's foreheads, right? It's out there for everybody to see. The next descriptor, whether it's number 9 or number 10, I saw the woman drunk with the blood of the saints, with the blood of the witnesses of Jesus. Oh, no, that would be number 10. Okay, so we're finished. All right. So we see that is this false religion is one of the major propellers of martyrdom of God's followers, of Jesus' followers in the time of the tribulation. We've read about them several times as we've worked through the book of Revelation. People who've died for the faith during the tribulation. They've given their life to follow Jesus. And this false religion has been one of the main reasons that they have died for the faith. Because they would not renounce Christ. They would not follow this religion that is evil and encompassing the world. They wouldn't do it. And so they paid with their life. So, I hope that made sense. Now, here's the thing. I want you to catch this, and then we'll be finished. When I saw her, I wondered greatly. Does somebody else in your translation, somebody else have a different way that reads?
What verse is that?
Verse 6, the last sentence in verse 6. My translation says, when I saw her, I wondered greatly.
Mine says, when I saw her, I was greatly astonished.
What translation is that?
Holman.
Holman. Go Baptist.
Did yours say great admiration?
What now?
Did yours say, mine said, I saw her and I wondered with great admiration.
Admiration. Interesting. Okay. Context would certainly say that's what translation is that?
King James.
King James. Okay. All right. There you go. That makes sense. Any others?
Number 6.
Okay. Go Holman Christian. You win this one. All right. So, with the Greek construction of this, and no, I don't have it memorized. You just have to trust me now, and I'll give you the evidence later if you want. With the Greek construction of this particular sentence, it would most accurately be translated, I was astonished with great astonishment. John was absolutely blown away. Now, here's why I make that a point. Mark is going to kill me. Here's why I make that a point. Think about all that John has seen. All the visions that he has been given of all the terrible things that are going to happen for 7 years, unfolding one after another, and they've been cosmic in nature, things that are in modern days he could not even explain it. Like, I don't even know how to describe this, and there's no ancient words to describe what I'm looking at, so I do the best that I can. We've talked about those things. He's seen demons coming up out of the ground. And yet the one thing throughout the whole book that he is blown away by is this. He just can't fathom it. That's how far gone the religious system will be in the time of the tribulation. And everybody will buy into it. And here's the thing. People don't buy into things that don't make sense to them. They just don't. Now, they may not fully understand it, but it's not way out there. This makes sense to these people. So, just because somebody can understand it and make sense out of it and can even defend it, it doesn't mean that it's right. In fact, my newest saying is, oh, I could agree with you, but I would be wrong too. So, listen, just because people can explain it, make sense out of it, and you can't, just because you can't refute it, doesn't mean that it's right. Listen, we would all do well just to say, I'm just going to stick with this. I'm just going to stick with this. So, anyway. Oh, man. Y'all talk a lot. Golly. So, what we're going to do is we're going to pray. Just real quick. If you have a prayer request, would you just raise your hand here in the room? Y'all can even, online, you can even put just a raise hand emoji in the comment section. Anybody got anything? Okay, all right. Anybody else? Okay, we're going to pray so we can go because we need to go. Thank you all for putting up with me. Thank you all for staying a little bit later than usual. I would say I'll do better next week, but there ain't no guarantees. I thought this was going to go quick. So, anyway. All right, let's pray. God, we thank you for your word. And Lord, Satan is really good at what he does, at the deception that he puts in front of us. And while we can't be demon possessed or anything like that, we can be led astray because of temptations that are put in our way and the world that we live in and how fun they make things seem and fulfilling and logical. And yet Satan is behind so much that just pulls us away from you. And so Lord, we just pray for understanding of your word. We pray for eyes to see and minds and hearts that can discern. We thank you for the Holy Spirit that does not leave that task just to ourselves, but that he will teach us and guide us and remind us in all things. So help us to be students, and help us to be your children who are in tune with you and aware of what your will is and what your truth is. And help us to stand for that, even when nobody else will, even when it doesn't always make sense, even when it comes at a price. Give us the strength to stand for you. God, we see the seeds of this already, the things we've talked about. We see the seeds of it already in place and doing its work, just like it was described how it'll be in the end. We already see that around us now. So help us to be lights in this darkness, and help us to be vocal with what we believe, with what the truth is, so that people can be delivered if they will but listen to the wooing of your Spirit. Use us to that end. In Jesus' name, amen. All right. Thank y'all. We'll see y'all Sunday. Have a great rest of the week.